when you think about it further, this claim that I think should be considered defensive by the entire gay community, that the Freemasons issue, that a homosexual is a person whose responsibility comes from the rebellion against their own sexuality. It represents an adversity to sexuality, sexuality itself bearing out your truer responsibility, and it doesn't. It's tantamount to telling the gay community they're the supernatural, in the sense that a Freemason will believe, which means beyond the ability for nature to account for, which is insulting, given that the gay community do exist, or that to be accepted as natural. In which case, you wouldn't hear of such definitions as the ones the Freemasons put forward. But when you think of the fact that in their minds they've got this, what they think is an edge, because they have a patron saint made out of Lucifer. So Lucifer's cross-examining male God all the time, and so it's Lucifer and God being in every way rebellious towards one another. Conversely, it's an endless courtroom procession, devil's cross-examination. Both of them being males, and both of them being rebellious against each other, and both of them not having sex with each other, presumably in the Freemasons' most sacred of minds, would then mean that, this definition, the way they define the gay community, has got to be a byproduct of their religiosity only, and with no scientific data to back up, and where what they're calling rebellion will ultimately probably be unrecognized forms of marginalization and unacceptance. Not saying that unacceptance by mainstream society should then turn or instill a rebellious attitude, and that rebellious attitude is to be recognized as the right way to justify definition of their sexual health identity, because that's always finding them out of adaptation to wrong cases, worst case scenarios, and situations whereby they've been wronged and marginalized. So there can't be any psychology, and they try and do the same thing by think of how snaky it is for the Freemason Church to go, well, our logo is an all-seeing eye, and you see a pyramid with an eye on top of it. You go, okay, are we to presume the three-dimensional aspects to this pyramid? Is it a true pyramid? Does it have four sides, or converging on one point at the top? Can the eye on top of the pyramid see into the pyramid itself? Can it check if there's even a pyramid scheme that you're involved in here? Because you can't unify all world's religions. You can't take any one of the main monotheistic religions on the table already out of the three forerunners, Judaism, Christianity and Islam, sit down 20 of its most devoted converts, say, now give me your argumented presentations concerning your most truest and rightful interpretation of the doctrine of Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, respectively, and have them end those meetings with unification agreements. You'll have them splitting out and dividing into different denominations, which, unless you're to say that these happen because of either buried or processed sex offence cases by ministers, and that's why the denominations expanded or divided out. You're to say that they reached the decision to form and split out into different denominations because of ideological points of consensus that they were never able to reach, irrespective of the amount of time they devoted to the debating of the issue. So if Freemasonry just says, well, we're out to unify, we'll unify, I'm like, no, you won't. You marginalise even more, and you'll marginalise while being concealed, and you'll marginalise while being concealed while taking credit for whatever on the surface claims of a theological nature that you're able to bear forward, as been stemming from Freemasonry, because truly if you're just out to unify, you don't have a religion of your own to really go with, aside from this, well, we've got Lucifer as a patron saint. We might be able to refine our ability to tell who's straight or gay if we made Lucifer a chick. Unfortunately, yeah. In the meantime, what I hate is more so than formal debates with polite church peers, is when agencies whose judgments are clearly influenced by religion and who will thank religion when taking credits for things, who will honour religion, but otherwise say that religion does not, theistic religion does not involve, does not bear a negative influence on their professional lives. I don't agree, because with what ethical system do you bring against, or do you back up that claim with, or justify it with? It would have to be an ethical system that at least knows how to contest or rival your religion. And if you've rivaled your religion with a sufficient ethical system, why have you not stepped back from it in a similar vein of protest? And that's what I'm not able to understand and ask to have constantly explained. So I'm able to understand it to certain extents, to the extent that if a bisexual is the only person and you want to intertwine the police state mentality with religion, with psychiatry, and forcing all of those three together on a targeted citizen at any point in time. The question of Jesus' sexuality needs to come into bearing. If you're to say he loved everybody, every person, every adult, in adult terms, you can say he loved everyone, but in adult terms, why would he not detract and go, well, I hate a transgender or a transsexual? So my argument is, it's more probable that he was an unrecognized because in inbred kingdoms with swords going, well, we can kill this person and romantically kill them, and we'll romanticize the killing, and we'll copy and write of his teachings, and we'll expand and decoratively, make him out to be more martyrful by expanding on his teachings and adapting miracle claims out of precedent pagan religions and integrating them into his narrative. Then then the claim, you can't, either don't fuse religion and psych together, or do it completely and have at the kingdom that wrote the book of Genesis in psychological terms. Well, clearly this story came from a male who was perhaps aggressed by the fact that a woman had to be created by his rib. Like, she owed all her life to him. It's perhaps more important that we criticize now, 4,000 years later, the integrity of the political infrastructure internally of Bronze Age kingdoms. I mean, you're not even insulting a modern kingdom of any kind by doing so. You're going, well, okay, so what probably happened was that these males that were being told, well, you're going to be groomed to become a prince, you're going to be appointed a wife, the wife will be a first, second, third cousin, your sister, your auntie, whoever. So every time they'd fuck, they'd probably feel sick afterwards. And every time they'd feel sick, they'd want relief from it. And every time they'd do that, they'd pursue it a commoner. And then they would probably order the execution of a commoner and have them executed by various means. And it would appease their pure bloodline nobilities. So, now the ultimate type of mind for them to go, like, what is this mind? It's just such, even we, to the risk of shaming our kingdom's reputation, even we can't write about this. We can't not write about this person. So, and the permeating idea that he loves everyone, in adult terms, will mean a bilateral brain, or you'll have a phobia towards a particular sexual health identity. So and yeah, the only demographic there, and that's it's quite telling for our society. And like, of course, our rights to privacy is respected at all times, as evidenced by all the mental illnesses we're saying the bisexual community are just God planned in store for. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that I think he was bisexual because I would like for him to have been one. I would like for the Islamic story that he was never crucified to have been true, but that's not the important. And more importantly, unifying religions is also not about saying what you like or think is fashionable in terms of organizing religions together. And you can't harmonize them if you can't even get a single denomination of Christianity to do this. So you have to so what I get mad at them doing is plucking an idea out here and going, well, by statistical probabilities you're yet to have heard that it's an Islamic idea, that their religion, I experienced this over time, that they would throw an ideal at me, and this idea I was at odds as to how to interpret it in terms of the internal politics of doing work in pharmacy. What is it you're talking about? And it's a religion and yours is a religion that does not only not admit that the bisexual community should exist. You say if a bisexual male exists, he is poof, whether he knows it or not. Means I'm forbidden entrance to your religion, yet you're coming to me pitching your ethics that could only come from your religion on me during work time. And what am I to say of that? So yeah, I don't mean to offend police officers when I say, like, I'm saying all you have to do is endorse psychology in principle and go, well, yep, if I'm told a psychological idea is none of your business because you're only concerned with the police, okay, why then even raise the conversation? You might bias my judgment, the officer may say. Nonetheless, I'll be interested in learning more. So what they'll get to is, well, to say that Jesus of Nazareth was a man who would love everyone, had the capacity or potential to love everyone, and even those who were killing him are writing up about him in love of him. The sick ones are the ones that I think enjoyed from the point of the ransom money put out for his abduction onwards, not just enjoyed his killing or making biscuits out of his killing, calling them communion wafers, and then 20 years later you learn that the guy giving out the wafers or that of your children. This is it's gone beyond a joke. It's gone beyond a joke, and I think that our magistrates will be wise insofar as they've presented us with, while it's not as wise as the Bill of Rights or the American Constitution, it does show the building blocks of the recognition of 4 basic rights to life, health, movement and expression that I consider to be more vital to the survival and flourishing of conscious life on this planet than saying that you have freedom to choose a religion. Because you already see the cultural backlash where people were wanting to write down Jedi. Now Big Pharma are coming back with a backlash saying, well, now we've linked mental illnesses tremendously to television and video. So fuck you, all you Jedi census form fillers. You dumb motherfuckers, and you had no idea what you were on about. No, yes, you absolutely did. It was not printed on the same human rights chart that you have the right to detract from a religion, to refuse that you be forcefully involved or concerned by a religious group, or forcefully made to join a religion, or that you be forced to choose a religious identity. And that's what I think these census form reflections where people were nominating Jedi showed. Yeah, it did show that the Star Wars fans coming out of the woodwork, but it also showed some ambiguity here in going, well, what if the question's wrong? Like, what religion are you in? What if that's the wrong question to ask? And because it's clearly to the exclusion of, are you a detractor from religion altogether? And to the implication that if you are so, it is not accepted by society. You are minoritized in the view of the cops. You'll be thought immoral by the cops, in the vein in which witch-burning people would say, oh, you are the godless. The godless meant immoral, was tantamount to immoral. You find when you assess this, it's a 3-part, very thick, 1,000+ odd page book, Bertrand Russell's History of Western Philosophy. And the middle section is the worst, section 2, which is about the Middle Ages and the Catholic Protestant advancement. Their reformative claims, where they try and say, well, look, we did try and make things better later on. You know, Mr. Tyndale, who spent all those years translating the Bible into English and then got rounded up and burnt by the church's order. This was because they were wanting to confiscate the book and keep it, the Bible, and have it in the church, so that you had to say to the priest, well, I'm having this sort of trouble. Priest, can you read an appropriate verse? Didn't want you to be able to look up verses for yourself. So this actually does make it more believable that verbal information could make its way around the traps from 33 AD, when in the year that Jesus is killed, to 70 AD, when the story is eventually written down on parchment and still have integrity to it. It mentions in its original uninterpolated form, no mention of a resurrection. You've got no confirmation of confession to the accusatory question, are you the king of the Jews? You've got fuck all miracles. You actually don't even have a great deal of God bothering being done by him either. You've got him introducing this metaphorical concept called the Son of Man, which I read to be sort of a humble poet style, bilateral thinking. And but you do have to admit, in studying it in isolation, that his death was not a good thing. And this is what happens. One difference between the divide that is saying his death was a good thing, and his death was his bad thing. They don't have. I can tell you how to out-debate them from going, well, his human death was a bad thing, but the supernatural outcomes were a good thing. Is because they didn't know what they meant by... They meant our supernatural concepts are concepts that nature is yet to come forward with better explanations or accounts for, such as the fact that heaven and hell came from people looking up to a kingdom guy who would unravel scrolls and go, hear ye, if you walk this far yonder, you will step over the edge of the earth and fall forevermore. The earth is flat with 4 corners. The earth is flat with 4 corners, and tonight on 4 corners, we will not be talking about the earth being flat with 4 corners. Thank you for watching 4 Corners. I am not an employee of 4 Corners, nor do I watch 4 fucking corners. By the way, it's a cube. It's not a Rubik's Cube, but it's still a cube. How many fucking corners does it have? Fucking 4 corners. Fuck you. Okay? You are hardly helping rectify for the stains of Christian shitting on the brains of modern society. No, and the Quran saying, well, and then the Islamic tradition is saying, well, the crucifixion never happened. Jesus lived a long life while not being the savior. Was a martyr who was credited for his wisdom, his little side grave. Their texts go from 600 Common Era. So that's 500 years after the Gospel of John. So if they're not even willing to get into a debate, if these Freemasons go, well, no, you're splitting hairs here if you're going to jump from 70 Common Era to 80 to 85 Common Era to 95 Common Era, irrespective of contextual differences. Yet you can jump all the way to a 600 Common Era document. And so what shows is, and we credit Islamists for being better scientists than Western scientists first, but they're religiously conquerors, and what they show is actually an element of this Freemason unity interest, because they could have just weighed up the problem and gone, well, look, even the Christians are divided among themselves. How do we conquer them? They don't even know who they are. They can't even get their own story straight concerning Jesus. And here goes, this solves the problem. Right at 600 CE, 500 years after the fact of the worst representation to make the biblical canon, the Gospel of John in 95 AD. And then have people going, well, it's splitting hairs that you should contest 600 CE gospel, in contrast to the harmonization of the four in the Christian biblical canon. As for Bertrand Russell's History of Western Philosophy, part 1 shows Greeks coming to terms with why godlessness didn't need to be a pejorative. It depending on the dictionary you own and who its source is, you'll find if they're a party to being a religious organization or not. One problem with the definition of theism is that it'll expand to belief in the existence of a supernatural god or gods, one god being monotheism, more than one god being polytheism. But what it doesn't say anything about is supernatural places, so heaven or hell. So we've already got it. That like if you're, and relativity shows this, if you have people at polar opposite ends of the earth pointing up to the sky at the exact same time, one asks the other, "Where's Jesus on his path to heaven?" And then the other one points. They're going to be pointing off at polar opposite different ends of the earth in polar opposite different directions of space at a relative orbital pattern of Earth's rotation around the sun, and Jesus would have he'd still been in the galaxy at large, Milky Way galaxy, but would have left our solar system a long time ago had he stayed and had he ascended to heaven at the fixed velocity of the speed of light. So now, while statements like this don't get going, well, yeah, that's ridiculous. The science of even questioning what could hypothetically have been Jesus' sexual health, they'll go, oh no, that's supernatural. And the only reason that they're saying that's supernatural, from what I can tell in empirical terms, is that there are an inquest on the little figurines of crucifixions Jesus, is that they got, well, crown of thorns are for shame, nails are for shame, nails in the arms are for shame, nails in the feet are for shame, crown, it's all for shame. The only thing that's not for shame is the loincloth. And then you have police... if you come to terms and realise this and go, no, I'm not biphobic, blah, 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 you can realise that, then be true to yourself, and then the religious cops will pose a threat to you. Because that's how they're finding fulfillment, or trying to. Jesus is not coming in the clouds to them. He's not watching them come into their partners. And if they want to be a witness to the investigation of a crime on their own terms, they're making fools of themselves in thinking that they're surveyed while masturbating by a pro-incest God, a pro-incest, pro-genocide, pro-infanticide, pro-rape, pro-sexual slavery, every type of destruction that you can pretty much think of prior to the development of technologically advanced forms of inflicting harm on humans, human life, and these horrid practices that diminish and depreciate the flourishing and welfare of sentient life on the planet are not only permitted by God, but they're mandated by God. You will, just as the Islam says, like, the more PhDs I get, the more respect I actually get in my own community if I am a suicide bomber that drives a van into a Hare Krishna gathering point. The more academic you become, the more PhDs you get, the more degrees, the more respectable your suicide bombing or whatever, your suicidal kamikaze will be in the minds of your religious peers. So, yeah, in that way, I submit it to the Christians if they're academic consider themselves academic, then you'll go surely to the Gospel of Mark, study in isolation, and as soon as you go to Matthew, you've got at the time of either the crucifixion or the resurrection, the graves of Old Testament saints all open up and they all come back. All the X-Men, Noah and the Ark. And the Ark comes out of a woman's ass because she was beginning to recognize how fucked up she was for Eve eating that apple. See, women's rights are secondary because women are secondary to the existence of men in the Bible. Their existence, their very existence, came at the expense of the first man's rib. Now, it's in my submission that the story really originated because within an inbred 4,000-year-old Bronze Age kingdom, these men were making themselves sexually sick, fucking their siblings and their cousins, and then going and have scribes write their stories down. So they were like, fucking take it out on the fucking bitch, if not executing commoners. And maybe they could recognize, particularly if in contest with another male, who they would ordering for execution, that they would, this is wrong. Like, this has got to have something to do with me just banging my auntie. What did this person do? They stole a plum from their own backyard. Kill them? Sure, okay. Though it was his own backyard, your claim to kill him for eating a plum sounds nuts. There is only one nut left in the plum after the plum's consumption. What do you think we should do about this? I don't know. But while I muse upon it further, I will sleep with all my cousins, all my female cousins, and then I'll come back with your answer. And so then this guy comes back, but with the story of Genesis. And the idea that there's this seething resent and hatred of women all throughout the creation story in the Bible is not women's fault. It should not be taught as women's fault. And that it's not even proper history is the best and most honest way intellectually to bridge that gap and say to women, you weren't created as a credit card payment back to males. You were, in fact, while the alpha males were out hunting and gathering, all the young could only have been not only tended to and nurtured for, but their social security and basic education would have all come from female monkeys taking care of them while the alpha male was out hunting and gathering before the young were capable of assisting on those endeavors. And then there's more credit to women in evolutionary history as well. But yeah, it's the wish not to even get the truth of the matter, even proximate truths, because like how insulting though. Well, Jesus as an adult, a male adult, loved everyone. Where I bring it to them is their contradiction, and it's why they love frisking. It's like, when would a police officer frisk in the event that he knows you're wearing nothing left on your lower torso and below, but silk black boxer shorts with no pockets and an intersewn pull cord that is so stitched heavily within the elasticity of the shorts that there's no way that, like, despite the fact you're monitored by two cameras constantly, there's no way you're going to rip that cord out of its stitching to hang yourself before one of the two cameras notices. Both. Obviously both converging on the same small amount of space in that watch house that isn't really particularly wedged by the question, do you want privacy in a police watch house? I want OxyContin instead of oxymoron. That's what I want. How about that? Because what I'm saying is very serious. But I've tracked and confirmed that an unprosecuted rape of a bisexual will turn on a Christian, arouse a Christian. I have confirmed that a Christian militant mind will assess a bilateral mind contemplating existentially deep art and then go, oh, I think you deserve to be ass raped by my hand for that. And the police do nothing about it and don't protest it. Just the sense of rape. And what has rape got to do with the crucifixion? The crucifixion symbology is everything about it is shame except for the loincloth. And you can say, well, what about nudity? And the Greeks, well, nudity is becomes an obstacle because you get to these "where do I come from" books, which I think are patronising even to children. It's fair enough to explain. I think probably at the time that curiosity, as long as you know that curiosity or the will or potential to ask a question had not been thoroughly oppressed and suppressed by the parent or guardian, is the appropriate time for opening discourse. Means that, well, yeah, what if Jesus were an oppressed bisexual and he was not allowed to be recognised for his sexual his inclinations relative to his own sense of his sexual health identity? He may well have told himself, like, you can't be this way, you can't be this way, while having a flock of female disciples, a flock of male disciples, and the sick part, and it's why I wish Christians would go, well, look, we've studied the St. Mark's Gospel in isolation. It's truly offensive. The way his mistreatment is truly offensive. You cannot bridge it by saying, well, his human mistreatment is bridged by the supernatural payoffs, because they are payoffs to pre-Copernican maps. If you want to live on a flat earth where you can either float up to heaven or sink into hell afterwards, go live on a page back when no one had pages. And that's also why information could circulate for 30 years, because all the commoners would have been doing was going around saying, yes, wash this linen, rake these leaves, make this garden, do these basic duties, while all their information, all of their executions, all of it all came from their library, their army, their navy, everything was all in the one kingdom. So whenever that man was to unravel his scroll, and you and I wouldn't have had a papyrus scroll to write our own names on back in those days, everybody would have attended and listened. And I'm putting it to you that while being crucified and dying, Jesus' mind being on his loves, or is it innate to a bisexual's anatomy, physiology? Is that for a moment he became momentarily erect during his own crucifixion, and it freaked the fucking shit out of the crucifiers, because those they had put to death, they had never recognized or seen that particular reaction for mid-crucifixion. So then they go cover shame. Otherwise, there's no reason to cover shame. Like, covering shame, I mean, his death was supposed to be the opening of a doorway, not the pre-representation, like an advertisement, marketing advertisement poster person, you know, like a slogan peddler is it's supposed to bridge and redeem the person back to the state of perfection, where they're going, well, being inbred is perfect. Who did Adam and Eve's kids have kids with? That's how we got here, because being inbred is perfect. Now, cover your shame with a leaf. And then they put a leaf on. It's like, well, you put the loincloth on Jesus, so you wanted to cover his shame. And so something had to have seemed shameful about killing him, but not shameful enough for them to remove the crown of thorns, and not shameful enough for them to stop the crucifixion process altogether. So that is my submitted argument, is that it was not an enjoyed erection by him, but it was one. And what it was is that, well, this is a sexual health identity that is of a type of character who is disposed towards being open to loving all types of different people. It is not a type of person that you get to freely ask finger bang, while assuming that they do it every 2 minutes to themselves. It is not for you to use verses like John 3:16 and go, well, this person won't mind us good Christians surveying them, because if you're thinking of if you are not a contestant of the human sacrifice of Jesus of Nazareth, if you're not against it and offended by it, you don't get to study a bisexual without their explicit consent pretty much tattooed on your balls or your cunt, whoever the fuck you are. Except for mine trusted. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the Antichrist Superstar and the United Nations of America. I have to read the pledge more in full. I just know that God hasn't been removed from it properly. So I pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the Antichrist Superstar of the United States of America. By love.